Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. I just wanted to let you know that this is part one of a two-part video, as this video is just too long for me to edit together within the 3-week period that I give myself. Please do keep an eye out for the second part, and please like and subscribe. Well, we have yet another game, but this time we are no longer playing as Ezio. This game takes place mostly during the Revolutionary War, so any Americans in the audience might have heard of some of the prominent figures that show up throughout the game. Before I go too in-depth with any one thing, I do want to mention this bit that I found funny. There's literally an email sent to Desmond that details all of the improvements added to the game. Of course, stated as upgrades to the anima simulation. But either way, the fourth wall break here was very nice. And I realize now that while not talking about the story may work for Kingdom Hearts, it doesn't entirely work for Assassin's Creed, where it actually has a coherent story that heavily impacts how well the game works, especially from this game forward. Also, another thing, I am going to be cutting the collectible section from the video, as I'm realizing they don't really do much to improve the video in any sort of way. Sorry for the extended intro, but on with the show. So, before I go any further, I do want to mention that a few videos back I misspoke. I felt that the stealth system in Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 was lacking, and I mentioned that it was because of the lack of crouching. Assassin's Creed 3 brings in the mechanic I was missing, but I was thinking of the crouching from Assassin's Creed Origins. The feature I was really missing was the ability to lure guards to a spot by whistling at them. I'm sorry for any confusion or outrage this may have caused, and I aim to do better in the future, rather than spewing whatever I can think of at the moment. I want to mention, before I sneak into the story, that all the missions can have anywhere from 0 to 3 optional objectives for you to get 100% synchronization with them, which would be a pain if they didn't bring in one specific feature, and that's reloading from the last checkpoint. Gone are the days where you have to restart an entire mission because a random enemy bugged out and instantly detected you, or the days where a single rock toss knocked you off a building, making you lose enough health to fail an objective. For now, we have the technology! Some of the optional objectives are annoying, especially once you hit the Tyranny of King Washington expansion, as they just seem hair-triggered to fail. So, we play as Haytham Kenway, a rather formal chap who has been sent to the 13 colonies in order to gather information about a door that he may be holding a key to. The way he acquired this key was, of course, an assassination in a theater. First, he has to get to America, though, and so he sets off on his 90-day voyage across the ocean. The captain talks to Haytham about how he thinks that he might have a mutiny on his hands. A few weeks pass, with Haytham only able to find that someone has been dropping barrels as a path for someone to follow and find them. Once the ship catches up, the captain sends Haytham down below deck, where one of the crew is waiting for him, revealing this to be a trap, set as revenge for the assassination earlier. After the trap is dealt with, Haytham goes back top deck and tells the captain to steer them into the storm to try and lose the other boat. Their boat takes some damage that magically fixes itself by the time they reach port, while the other boat is lost in the storm, their location only known by Davy Jones himself. Upon reaching the colonies, he finds Charles Lee, a rather nice fellow who is willing to do anything for the order, as he aspires to be a part of it himself and will do anything to prove it. He meets with one of the first people he is to gather, William Johnson. Johnson sends Haytham to find Thomas Hickey, and together they find the missing pages of Johnson's research. After a while, he finds that he doesn't have enough to decode the key himself, but there is a tribe of natives that have been taken captive that may be able to help. But first, they need to find Benjamin Church, in order to locate said natives. Although when they get to the estate of Mr. Church, they find it ransacked, after of course watching Lee kick down the door and Haytham having no idea what to say about the matter. I'm sorry, I had to mention it, I found it funny, and made me like Lee that much more. They find him being tortured by a man named Silas Thatcher, who is trying to make Church pay them for protection, and when he denies, Silas allows one of his men, designated Cutter, to cut out his tongue, take his hands, and cut off his hands off my cock. Church informs Haytham that the man they're looking for is Silas, as he's been enslaving the natives and selling them off. But there's one name left on the list to gather before they can lead an assault on the fort that the natives are being held in: John Pitcairn. Haytham and Lee go to release John from the clutches of Edward Braddock, whom Lee is working under when not helping Haytham. Braddock refuses and sends them on their way. However, Lee and Hatham ambush the procession escorting Pitcairn, and Hatham threatens Braddock that the next time he raises a blade to the man, all debts will be forgotten, and he will not be spared. The group uses a tactic much like the Trojan horse. They methodically move forward towards the base, taking out all the soldiers who could possibly realize that something isn't right, and eventually make it to the compound. Hatham releases the native woman that's been sitting next to him the entire way, and she immediately runs off and hides. Hatham sneaks through the compound, releasing all the captives without anyone seeing, until there's a full-blown riot taking place. In the ensuing chaos, Hatham reaches Silas, but doesn't kill him, rather wounding him so that Church can take his revenge on the man. 6 months later, the group is still no closer to finding the storehouse that the key goes to, but Hatham has had people looking out for the woman he rescued in the hopes that she would help him find what he's looking for. He asks her about the symbols on the key, and she says that she's seen them before in one place, but she isn't allowed to speak of the area. But she will take him to it, should he help her. Hatham agrees, and they set forth a plan to make it happen. Hatham disguises himself as one of Braddock's soldiers in order to get close to him and kill him, but one of the other soldiers realizes what's happening and takes aim at Hatham, only for him to be rescued by Lee. Man, I really like Lee. They've given us such a good character, who's kind but also deadly. I can't wait to continue our adventures with him. But I digress. In the ensuing panic, Braddock decides that he wants to play chicken with Hatham and starts off the chase. Hatham isn't a fan of schoolyard games, and when he catches up to him, is about to shoot him, when another one of Braddock's soldiers shoots his horse in the back leg, pinning him under the beast. Hatham is then rescued by the native woman, who buys him enough time to get unstuck, and another chase with Braddock ensues. Or not if you're me, as I just shot him down immediately. Now Hatham, having lived up to his side of the bargain, asks Zero, and yes, I did forget her name until now, to take him to the storehouse. When they get there, Hatham has a mental breakdown as his key doesn't fit the hole, and as he's about to leave, Zio expresses her affection for the man, leading to a steamy night in a cave. Hatham then explains to his group back at the pub that the key didn't fit the door he was led to, and that they will have to find another way in, and suggests that they make Lee a full member as he's proven himself time and time again. They then go through the process, and I couldn't be prouder of our boy Lee, finally getting himself into the Templar Order? You mean to tell me I've been a Templar this whole time? Oh no! The game takes a turn when we now play as Conor, son of Hatham. The first bits here are just extended tutorial segments, with the first one playing hide and seek, learning how to track and hide. When it's Conor's turn to hide, he's pulled out of his hiding spot by not his friends, but by Hatham's. Lee's the first one to start asking Conor questions. Which, hey, that shouldn't be so bad. He was always extremely nice before. Oh god, he's choking me against a tree! When Conor wakes up, we find that his village is on fire, and we get a tutorial on how to lift heavy objects, and how to watch a parental figure die in a fire in front of you. The next portion we're able to play is in Conor's teenage years, as he and one of his friends are given tasks of their own to accomplish. We get a drawn-out tutorial on hunting. Conor finally gets his questions answered by the village elder, which details why they don't leave the land they occupy, as they have to protect it to keep the storehouse hidden from all those who would try to open it. And then hand Conor the key to open the storehouse, being an apple of Eden that looks like it's made of glass. Upon touching the apple, Conor is brought into the Nexus, and Juno explains that he will be the final key in the quest of helping Desmond, and that in order to save his people, he needs to find a man wearing the assassin symbol. The village elder sees the symbol and tells Conor to head to a homestead past the valley in order to find the man that can help him. Achilles asks the boy why he wants to be trained in the way of an assassin, and then gives him the full history of the order. Conor jumps forward a few months after learning all sorts of combat, language, and other lessons from Achilles, until Achilles finally decides to fix up the manor a bit and takes Conor into town. I have to say, I love how innocent Conor is being outside of the civilized man's world and not understanding racism. Achilles sends Conor to the store, and upon heading back to Achilles, notices that there's quite a bit of commotion in town that is focused on town square. Achilles and Conor notice Hatham bribing a guard, who then goes on top of a roof to fire the first shot into the crowd and start the Revolutionary War. So, before he takes the shot, Conor takes him out. Whew, that was close. We almost relived history that I know about. Conor tells the man that he's killed that his plan has failed, but he points out Charles Lee across the street on another rooftop who takes the shot and starts it all. Hatham motions a guard to see Conor to blame this all on him, and it's up to Conor to escape. When you get back to the manor, you get another tutorial. this time with the Ledger, which seems to be this game's replacement to just buying stores and getting passive income, as this time around you have to play the market a bit, using supply and demand, and honestly I like this system much more, as it's more interactive and doesn't allow you to just sit in a hay pile for 20 minutes to get paid. The next system we get a tutorial on is the sailing, which I didn't think came around until AC4, so it's a nice surprise to be honest. Of course, where there's sailing, there's also naval combat, and we get a quick walkthrough of that as well, just after seeing Benjamin Church, who's sitting at a table with a sailor named Nicholas Biddle. What they could be up to is a mystery to us at this point, but once we finish the sequence, we are forced out of the Animus to deal with Desmond's part of the story. So, long story short, Desmond was kidnapped by Abstergo and was tested on within the Animus, giving us Assassin's Creed 1. At the beginning of Assassin's Creed 2, he escapes and meets up with the other members of the Assassins, but he mostly just gets sent into the Animus so that he might be able to gain years of training in a matter of days. But he also starts his adventure into figuring out where Ezio's Apple of Eden is. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is where Desmond continues his training as Ezio and finds where he left his Apple of Eden, and by the end of the game goes into the temple where it is rested, but he is possessed by Juno, who forces him to stab Lucy, killing her. Assassin's Creed Revelations is where Desmond is trying to recover from the coma that followed his possession by Juno, and the forced overlap of memories in his head. By the end of the game, they end up at the cave that they're currently trying to open in AC3, and the DLC of Revelations lets us know that Lucy was a double agent and was planning on turning against them. At the beginning of the game, they enter the temple they're working on and plug him into the Animus to keep him stable, where he then plays as Hatha. He does get booted out because of the surprise of Hatha being a Templar, where he gets upset with his father for constantly forcing him into the Animus, and doesn't even ask Desmond how he's doing or anything else like that. And when he compares his father to the Templars, he decks him. Now, that's been cleared away. Man, I really didn't want to talk about Desmond's story, but I kind of have to at this point. The tower is powered by a sort of battery. Desmond found one on its way in, but it's almost out of juice. So Desmond is pulled out of the Animus because the rest of his crew have found another battery, and they need to get to it. After breaking into an office and grabbing the first battery, he's approached by a man named Daniel Cross, who used to be an assassin, but ended up being a sleeper agent for the Templar. The man makes a huge mistake and gets too close to Desmond with a gun, and Desmond knocks him out, and then flees the building, going back to their base in the tower. Upon re-entering the memories of Conor, Achilles gives him a new weapon, the rope dart. They talk about getting Conor some training with it, but find a knock at the door. It's Conor's childhood friend, and there's bad news coming his way. William Johnson is forcing the natives off of their land, and if they aren't gone soon, they will be killed. Conor plants a tomahawk in the front porch pillar and explains the significance of it to Achilles, although he states that he could have just used a tree. Conor meets up with Samuel Adams in an attempt to find and kill Johnson, before he has the chance to hurt his people again. Sam says that he can help Conor find his man, and as luck would have it, he's heading to a meeting with people who might be able to help in that endeavor. They talk about the growing taxes on tea, and how Johnson is smuggling tea off the boats and selling it at a marked up price. They figure that Johnson has been making exorbitant amounts of money and using that to purchase the land that Conor's tribe is on, and decide to cut his smuggling short by destroying all the tea that's been unloaded from the boat. But this isn't enough. They need to cut off all of Johnson's funding, not just a bit of it. And so, they conduct a little something called the Boston Tea Party. 6 months later, Conor's friend comes back to tell him that the elders are meeting with Johnson and his group, and that he fears that they will be pushed out of their lands. Conor immediately mobilizes to take out Johnson, and with his dying breath, Johnson says that he was trying to save the natives, as in the future, when land becomes thin, the settlers would no longer care about the natives. While Conor and Achilles are talking about what needs to be done to free the colonies from Templar control, there's a knock at the door. Conor has received a letter from Paul Revere. John Pitcairn has decided to lead the Redcoats to march on Concord to destroy the Sons of Liberty's weapons and supplies, and Lexington to kill Samuel Adams. Conor attempts to help the militia in Lexington, but when they are quickly overrun, John Parker gives Conor a letter to take to James Barrett, so that he may get his people ready to fight the British onslaught that is approaching. Though the battle is won thanks to Conor's expertise, he is still distraught about the number of men they lost, and that Pitcairn still stands, and he intends to amend this. Conor is then sent to a man named Israel Putnam, who may be the key to Conor finding Pitcairn. Conor confronts the man about the whereabouts of Pitcairn, and the man says the only thing that could get Pitcairn out of the city, where he's completely protected, is if he lost the boats that are currently firing upon them. Conor picks up a flag of the 13 colonies and says that this will be his signal that he has won. But Putnam isn't assured of his skills and says that he'll speak kindly at his funeral. Upon his return, Putnam informs Conor that Pitcairn is nearby on Molten Hill, but the only way to get to him is to wait for his men to thin their ranks. But Conor says he's just gonna go in there and take him out now. Conor pulls off his plan, sneaking through the camp and assassinating Pitcairn. And when he gets his last moment to talk, which honestly is weird that this happens every time you take out an important target. Like, I get that it's to allow them to exposit, but still, the other enemies around me just stopped so I could talk to the target before he dies for good. Pitcairn says that he only wanted to talk to Adams, to get them to lay down their arms before more must die. Conor takes a letter off his body and returns it to Putnam, who reads it and reveals to us that it's a plot to take out General Washington. Conor meets Benjamin Talmage, whose dad was an assassin, who tells him that the man he's to hunt down to continue his lead that the Templars want Washington dead is none other than Thomas Hickey. Conor heads to New York to find Hickey and follows members of his counterfeiting ring back to him, where a chase ensues. Once Conor tackles Hickey, they are apprehended by American soldiers and are put under arrest. When Conor tries to fight it, he is knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds that he's been stripped of everything, and he needs a plan to get out. Wait, his next-door cellmate is Hickey? And he's being moved to the VIP cells? Even worse is, before Hickey was moved, he told Hatha and Lee about Conor, how there's still one assassin left. Conor talks with a man named Webb, who helps him hatch a plan to swap out the real key with a fake one, and even better, get to Hickey in his cell to kill him. Sadly, Lee and Hickey thought ahead, and when Conor went to kill Hickey, he found the warden's body instead, and Hickey and Lee behind him, both wielding pistols. They explain their plan to get Conor hung on the morning of the next day, and Conor strikes back, leading to Lee pinning him against the door, choking him, and in that instant, he realizes that Conor is the boy from all those years ago fulfilling his promise. But now isn't the time for action, as Conor is unconscious once more. The next morning, Conor is transported to the along with this magically appearing man, as the door was shut on Conor without anyone else inside. Of course, to no one's surprise, Hickey is here, taking pride in the fact that his crimes are to be pinned on Conor, and that the man he was trying to save might also be meeting his end at the execution. Conor is set to hang, but of course, his order is here to protect him, and just as he begins to hang, the assassins come to his aid. Conor then chases after Hickey, who makes a mad dash for Washington and stops him. Hickey explains that he never really knew the why behind anything he did. He just followed the money and power, never questioning. He then gives us this banger of a quote that I'll just let play out.
Don't look at me like that. We're different, you and I. You're just some blind fool who's always chasing butterflies. Whereas I'm the type of guy who likes to have a beer in one hand and a tea in the other. Thing is, boy, I can have what I seek. Had it even. Your hands will always be empty.
Desmond is once again pulled out of the Animus to find another power source. Where is this one, you might ask? Well, let's just say that Desmond is
going to Brazil!
Once he gets to where the artifact is, he finds a man with a gun has already taken it and shot everyone in the VIP lounge. So obviously, Desmond chases after him, having to weave through security as well to catch him. As Desmond goes to re-enter the Animus, a third power source is detected. Yet, when Desmond offers to go after it, his father denies him, saying that time is becoming too short and that he'll go instead. Once Conor comes into contact with Washington, he asks the whereabouts of Lee, and Washington tells him that he is unaware at the moment, as there are a few things troubling him. The first being that there are supply caravans that have gone missing, to which he suspects there is treachery afoot. The other thing is that a traitor named Benjamin Church has also disappeared following his release from prison. What was his sentence? Sending information of the number of troops they have to the Loyalists. Conor promises Washington that he will find out what's going on, and see if the two events are linked. Conor heads to an abandoned church just outside the battlefield that has been the hideout of Church and his men, only to find Hatha, who ambushes Conor. The two have a conversation in which Hatha tells him that Church is no longer his ally, and wants him punished. And Conor wants the supplies, so they make a truce for now. Oh boy, family bonding time! They follow the trail and find one of Church's men trying to fix his wagon. He runs once they try to apprehend him, leading to a chase. Conor asks where Church is, and once he's given enough details, Hatha reminds us, the player, that he hates playing any sort of schoolyard game, and shoots the man. Conor protests and says that he didn't have to kill him, but Hatha just orders him to go search the camp that was mentioned. Conor asks what Hatha will be doing, to which he pulls the ultimate parental trick.
Never you mind. Just do as I ask.
Hatha is captured while Conor is investigating the camp, and he saves him. Once he's free, but certainly not when the fighting's done, Hatha tells Conor to meet him in New York once he's done here, and they'll do further work. They find that Hatham's plan would fail, as he was planning on waving Conor through Church's guards, but he's replaced them. So, Conor heads to go find a mercenary that's off duty to steal his uniform and sneak in. Conor's plan doesn't quite go as planned, and Hatha admits to the guard that Conor is his son in an attempt to get Conor passage, which works. Conor and Hatha speak about Conor's mother, and when he reveals that she burned alive in front of him, Hatha displays his sorrow and apologies. Conor then says it was Lee's fault under his order, to which Hatha denies, saying that he told the order to focus on more grounded ideas, that they could get no further with the precursor site. But Conor is done listening. Hatha reads out Church's sentence, but before they can kill him, they find that he isn't the real Church, merely a double. The decoy says that he'll tell them where Church went if they let him live, which Conor agrees to, but once he said his bit, Hatha kills him. Whoops, should have gotten confirmation from them both. Another round of guards show up and blow up some barrels, which lead to the entire place going up in flames. Conor and Hatha must escape, and once they're on the top floor, the floor gives way, killing 2 guards that Hatha was dealing with, and leaving Hatha hanging for his life. Conor saves him, and they try to make it out the window, but it's locked. Which leads to this scene, and I'm just gonna let this play with the original audio, because I just love it so much.
Stuck. See if you can find something to pry it open. Conor? What are you up to? Oh, no. Don't do that. There's no way of knowing what's on the other side! Bye! We do now.
They follow behind Church, finding the frigate he used abandoned. However, there was still a schooner, which they followed after into an ambush. Once the smaller ships are capsized, they disable the man of war, but Hatha forcibly takes the helm and crashes their boat into Church's and boards the ship. While the rest of the crew get ready to board and defend their ship, Conor and Hatha both enter the fray on the other boat. Once Conor reaches Church, he finds that Hatha has already beaten him to a pulp. But he still has some energy to him, as he fights back against Conor's question of where the supplies are. Once he's stabbed, of course he tells them where they are. Conor and Hatha come together to share what they found, but ultimately it seems they both came empty-handed, so they head after some of the British commanders to learn what they know. After capturing the men, one escapes, leading to another very common conversation between a parent and child.
Why me? Because I said so. Now go.
After recapturing the soldier, they interrogate him, and once he tells them that the British are going to withdraw from Pennsylvania and march on New York, Hatha once again kills the guard, to Conor's disgust. Conor relays the information to George Washington. Meanwhile, Hatha sneaks into the tent behind Washington and reads out a letter for Conor, detailing the orders given to Washington's men to exterminate the natives. All of them, including Conor's people. Conor sets off to leave, and Hatha says that he'll help, but Conor lashes out at him for sitting on this information, as there was no way he just learned of these orders. Conor rides towards his village to stop the orders to fire from reaching them. When Conor meets with the village elder, she's surprised that Conor isn't with Lee, as he's taken some of the tribe to try and stop those who would take their land. Full of conflicting feelings about the news he has just heard, Conor rushes off to stop his people from harming the army he has tried so hard to help. When Conor reaches his childhood friend, and yes, if you haven't figured it out yet, I just can't pronounce the name, they get into a fight. As Lee has told them that the army seeking to destroy them is being helped by Conor, that he's been corrupted. His friend tries to kill him, so in order to protect himself, Conor lands the killing blow. While dying, his friend tells him that Lee rides to Monmouth to let the Loyalists know of the Patriots' plans, and that the Crown will be the victor. Conor goes to Monmouth and finds that Lee has ordered all of the Patriot troops to advance, straight into an ambush. But Conor is able to defend their point with the help of Marquis de Lafayette's men, long enough for most of the soldiers to double back. Conor tells Washington that Lee is a traitor and will no doubt try to pin it on him. Washington says they will investigate, which infuriates Conor, who says the time for that is past, and that if he spares Lee, he will kill him with his own hands. He then tells Washington to enjoy this victory, as it's the last that he will deliver to him. Desmond is once again pulled out of the Animus with bad news. His dad has been captured. The Templars also send a ransom video, give them the apple, and they'll give back his dad alive. They then head to Abstergo, with Desmond talking about how they looked for other power sources, as his dad would probably just want him to finish the mission, but he can't just sit back knowing that there was something he could do to save his father. He goes through the building, taking out security as he goes, until he gets to the Animus room, and is confronted by Daniel Cross, who has him cornered, until some weird thing starts happening to him. It might be some kind of bleeding effect, but I'm unsure. While Cross is fighting his inner demons, per se, Desmond kills him, and Vidic gets legitimately angry about his sleeper agent dying, and he starts berating Desmond about the archaic views of the assassins. Once Desmond reaches Vidic, he is of course surrounded by guards, with his dad in the center of the group tied up, real supervillain-like. Vidic demands the apple, and Desmond plays like he's going to give it to him, but instead uses it to control the guards in the room to shoot Vidic and then themselves. With the same golden effect that was on David during his freakout, did they use a piece of Eden to control him? Was he never really a sleeper agent? Who knows? Desmond's father questions why he would save him instead of working on the mission, but ultimately accepts the outcome. Honestly, I love the scene of the estranged father and son coming together and realizing that though they have been harsh and even distant, they still love and respect one another. They grab the final power source, and Desmond flaunts his power before heading back to base. While loading into Connor's memories, he exposits that the Loyalists are falling back, Lee was spared and is now being held in Fort George, and that Connor must find a way to breach its walls to kill him. Lafayette brings good news for Connor, though he is confused as to why he needed the contract with Admiral de Grasse. Connor takes down a British fleet and even a man-of-war with no cannons, merely boarding it alone. De Grasse is impressed, and even though he is hesitant to follow through with Connor's plan to shell the walls of Fort George with his ships...
But a promise is a promise, even when made to a lunatic.
The lighting of the flare goes off without a hitch, but once the firing starts, Connor is hit with some debris, causing him to get a head wound of some kind. This makes it hard for Connor to get around the fort, and he can't find Lee, so he calls out to him as a challenge, only to find his father saying that Lee is gone. Connor and Hatham fight, but though he fights hard, Connor is ultimately overpowered, and Hatham goes to strangle Connor. But Connor stabs him in the neck, killing him. During his time in the spotlight, Hatham does not repent or threaten. Rather, he tells Connor that in a way, he's proud of him for showing strength and conviction. Noble qualities indeed, before falling to his knees, dead.
Thank you for making it this far. If you enjoyed this, then please leave a like and subscribe. Also, please look out for part 2, which should be coming out in about 6 weeks.